Stephanie. I got my own table.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You're ready to get started?
Big brother, I see what you're doing.
She drew the short straw today.
Oh, he's not sitting next to the principal.
You know, I'm saying Stephanie drew the short straw sitting next to you. Just kidding.
She's
I think she's not coming today, right?
That's right.
She saw this.
She saw it.
said, forget this.
So I'm gonna spread out.
We're ready.
That's all right.
We each get our own table.
Wait
That's
a minute, I
amazing.
get to choose which name I wanna go by today, is that the?
We're ready.
Oh,
David?
yeah, y'all.
Okay. Good
Don't you
afternoon and
understand?
welcome to the April 3rd, 2023 meeting of the City of Charleston's Design Review Board. My name is Erica Chase, the board's chairperson. The members of the board with us tonight are Andy Smith, Aaron Stevens, Ashley Jackrell, Ben Whitener, and Dino Spliolio. Members of city staff with us are David Meeks and Patrick Carlson. We do not have any board members recused from any projects, and we do not have any projects that have been deferred. The order of the meeting will be as follows. Staff will give an introduction of each project, then the applicant team will have 10 minutes for their project presentation. If you need time beyond 10 minutes, please let me know at the start of your presentation. We will then have time for board questions, then public comments. Public comments are limited to 10 minutes. David will then give city staff recommendations. Then the applicant team may respond or clarify to public comments and city staff comments. We will then go into board discussion, and during board discussion, the applicant team may only speak if asked a question by the board or to clarify any inaccurate information. If everyone could please silence or turn off all cell phones or any devices that may make noise. I do want to remind everyone that our board is limited to site design and architecture. We do not have authority over zoning issues such as land use, building density, flooding, or traffic. So with that, we will get started with agenda item number 1, 3030 Maybank Highway, requesting conceptual approval for a new townhome community.
Thank you, Erica. I didn't bring any contact slides since we've seen this one before, so. Ready?
How are y'all this evening?
Hi, Jen.
Good. I'm Jenny Horn with Stan Tack. Let's see, I don't have my glasses here, and Erica, I do have a bit of a draw, so my 10 minutes or our 10 minutes collectively might go a little long. So apologies up front, but just wanted to, if you'll bear with me just a moment, read through some of the comments from the last time we were here before y'all. So I'm going to paraphrase some of this, but staff recommended that the views on entry should be special. So the general sense was that the entry felt a little underwhelming and for the site plan to be restudied a bit more in that regard, and also in how it addressed coming into the community and approaching some of the townhome units as well. Overall, the landscape plan, it was requested that it be restudied to include the full limits of the development versus the code compliance. Third, staff would like to see the wet pond shape and the surrounds become more organic and less rigid on the site plan. Also study the pond path edges a bit more. Comment 4, there's a probability that some residents will drive to the mailboxes upon arrival to the site. So basically study that runoff area. So from a site plan landscape perspective, we took those comments and went back to the drawing board a bit more. So with our new plan, our approach has veered a bit from what you saw last time. Last time it was just a straight in approach and you came almost in alignment between the the buildings that flank the amenity area. So now we've kind of veered it in a bit more into the site with hopes that with our landscape and the actual existing conditions of all the beautiful live oaks that are abutting Maybank, that it really creates this low country landscape as you come into the development. And the reason being is a little twofold in that we also have some stormwater requirements that we have to meet on the property itself. So we're looking to really capitalize on some of the landscape that's going to afford us to do within that country. So we come into the development. We still pretty much have the alignment of the townhomes that you saw previously. They've just been skewed ever so slightly to open up and allow us a little bit more room into the center of the development. A lot of the lawn or the graphic that represents as lawn in the plan is part of our infiltration pond area, and it is centralized in the center of the space, but it's also captured within these spaces of the development as well. And the idea with that is that we would treat those areas as very pervious, almost like a root zone there that you would in athletic fields. So we get a lot of percolation through the groundwater in big storm events, but the edges are going to be treated as if it was like a littoral shelf or a naturalized landscape on the edges, so you don't really see that delineation of the infiltration pond. The more rigid area of the wet pond area, still working through those edges with the engineering group, but in order to meet some of our calculations, we have to have somewhat of a rigid form to that space. But again, the idea is that those edges where that rigid look hits the more naturalized will be buffered with some of our more naturalized landscape. We do have a streetscape scheme throughout the development. What we'd like to do, because we are limited with some of our space in the verge, is like really capitalize on those spaces in between the townhome units with our more medium canopy tree landscape in between where the verges are a little bit tighter and smaller. Introduce more of the sable palmetto look and feel, and of course introduce lots of grasses, natives, perennials throughout the development. The pull off, the mailbox pull off, last time it was, I'm sorry for the people that won't see me pointing, but thank you, David. We had the mailbox located in this area. In this scheme, you can see we integrated the pull off in the mailbox area that David is pointing to. I believe those are our main items that we changed through the last time that you saw us here. And with that, Bill, I'll let you come up and talk through some of the architectural.
And let me know which slides you'd like me to.
Perfect, thank you. My name's Bill Sense, I'm with Vignette Architecture. If you want to go to sheet G001. On this particular sheet, we're showing the revisions that were asked of us from the previous review. Comments such as simplifying the materials and trying to play around with some relief on the elevations were suggested. So what we did is we removed the vertical trim, the vertical board and batten from the gables, from the lower level space to help accentuate the verticality of the structure. And instead, we just simplified everything with simple horizontal lap siding. By doing that, we were able to use a horizontal band to separate the first floor and lower level spaces, which kind of gives us an opportunity to play around with the color selections as well. So that way it's not one entire monotone. We can play around with the lower level being one tone and the upper levels being another, which I think gives a good variety. character to the structure. What we also did was we got rid of the shingles that were on the original design, also replaced them with lap siding. And then we added rear balcony elements to help also bring in some three-dimensionality to the structures. The biggest change that was also made was on the side elevation. It was asked that some interest was also brought to the elevation, so we created this pop-out space for more aesthetic relief, and we also created a awning space to relate to the front elevations on the side. And so that also will help bring in additional character, so it doesn't seem like it's just a block-like structure. Other elements that we were looking into was also improving the front door entry. Some of the doors in the front were unprotected, and now that they have roof awnings, it gives that additional protection and character that you would see down here as well. That's it regarding the changes that were asked from us from the previous review.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
For Jenny, the infiltration area, is that just gonna be like a sod finish? Okay.
Yes, yep. So everything kind of noted in this kind of graphic would be sod.
Okay. I was thinking more of that front area up there, like,
Through here.
yeah, that's all
Yeah,
just,
the idea this would be sod, but on the edges with the streetscape would be more planted. So visually driving in, you wouldn't necessarily see them.
the last time, is the number of units the same as the last, just reoriented? Okay. And I might be confusing projects, but were there any attainable or workforce units in this project? Okay. And then I think the only thing from my notes that maybe wasn't addressed in your presentation, Bill, was to take a look at the privacy screening for the outdoor functions, meaning I think we were talking about the rear areas of the buildings. Was there anything that was amended on that item?
No, not particularly from what I remember. I think that all that was the study was just the added balcony space just to make it seem more inviting, and then just studying the window pattern itself.
Any other questions?
Just a couple, and thank you. It's really is evolving very nicely. Just knowing Charleston and our winds and rains, how would you feel of adding a canopy similar to what you have on the ground level to the doors on the balconies?
Yeah, I'll run that by the owner. I think that's a good idea. I think added protection obviously is justified. It's just a matter of how it presents itself and lighting and so on. So I think it's worth studying.
And I really do like how you simplified the elevations greatly. Very attractive, very nice. Well, let me ask you, as far as the colors, you had made the comment about monochromatic. Is this the scheme that you're thinking of at this point in time? This is conceptual.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a design intent. I think the idea is to make it feel like it's separate areas, and it's not meant to be one consistent color. I think by mixing the colors around, it gives it additional character and additional value.
Any additional questions?
I was going to say, for a Georgia graduate, the landscape architect did pretty well as far as presenting things.
I know.
That was kind of fast.
With that, we will move on to public comment period. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this project? You can raise your hand.
I just have a really quick question.
Okay, just 1 second. Let me run. Yeah, no problem at all. Sorry. So we did receive a number of online submissions. However, unfortunately, they were all commenting on the allowable use on the property or on traffic. So if anyone's watching on the live stream, I encourage you to speak with your council member or inquire with staff regarding those items. It is outside the purview of our board. So, but yes, ma'am, go ahead. You can state your name and address for the record.
Cynthia Davis, address 3108 Timberline Drive. I guess, I don't know if this has anything to do with traffic, but I just wanted to understand the entrance of the project itself. Is it gonna be on Maybank or is it going to be entered on Sailfish?
Yes, ma'am. If you give us just a moment, we'll run through any other public comments and then we'll circle back up to you to answer it. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak? Okay, with that, the public comment period is closed. So what we'll do is David will give staff recommendations and the applicant team will come back and they'll answer your question once we get through staff question. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff observations, a lot of these are going to be what the applicants have already covered. In staff's opinion, all the staff board comments from the last meeting have been addressed, except for adding privacy fencing to the back of each unit. The backs of the building face facades and the sides have improved with larger windows, an added bay, shed roof, and addition of a French door and balconies. The pond in the center is much nicer looking with natural looking beds rather than the hard edge. The entry drive has been shifted to the west and it looks better. Lighting at the ground floor level now matches the rest of the siding. And pull off at the mailboxes has been added. Staff also approves of the color schemes. Staff comment number 1, we do ask that you provide privacy fence for each backyard. Provide more than just one section of fence between each unit where you can. And if it could extend out from the back of each unit as far as possible and become enclosed with that back gate, that would be ideal. Perhaps this is not possible with the units that back up to the pond, but these units with short backyards should at least have one section of privacy fencing between each unit. Staff comment number 2, the current concrete patios shown look to be about 8 feet by 4 feet wide. This seems too small to enjoy and could be increased in size a little bit. Staff comment number 3, by the next review, we ask that the applicant to please provide a blow-up plan of one of the townhome backyards, not one against the pond, but showing the privacy fence, more detail of the backyard patio. Staff comment number 4, provide a blow-up landscape plan of one of the townhome groups. We do recommend conceptual approval.
Thanks, David. Does the applicant team want to respond to public comments and staff comments?
Tony Berry. I guess if you can go to So the initial main entrance will be off of Maybank Highway. This property is 3 parcels to the west of Sailfish. So the property does not abut directly to Sailfish. So initially the only access will be off of Maybank. So we are incorporating into the plan an internal connection off of Maybank to connect to the parcel to the north, I guess probably to the east and the west of us. So if and when the properties adjacent to us, between us and Sailfish are ever developed, they're required to provide access across their properties as well. This is planning for a future connection to Sailfish if and when those properties are developed and if they're required.
How would you know if those properties are gonna be available to development? So for right now, the entrance will be on.
Right now, the only entrance is on.
So it's those other 2 properties that would have to allow to open before you can have that entrance in the back there.
Actually, 3.
Oh, for
Right.
Right.
We've reached out to them and asked if they have an interest in wanting to cooperate with our development, provide access, et cetera. They do not. And I think the comment about covering of the balconies on the rear definitely will be something that can be incorporated. I think the only staff comments that we probably want to study is the units that actually back up to, we have probably less ability here than we do internally. And we'll be glad to study that comment in all the areas. And, in some instances, hopefully like this, sometimes, the location is somewhat of an amenity too. I mean, this location on Maybank Highway for this kind of community hopefully will be viewed as an amenity in itself. So I think we'll also hear what's being said and allowed to come back, maybe look at some more common usable amenity for the entire community that might offset everyone having their own 10 by 10 concrete backyard. But we definitely will look at
Thank you.
that. Thank you.
With that, we are now in board discussion.
I have one question, I'm sorry. The lady from the public raised a good point about these connection roads. So is the approach right now, are you just gonna pave it in asphalt? Because you have like curbs drawn in asphalt, and then does it just end at the property line? Is that the current proposed? Okay.
And I assume that's a requirement by the city.
As part of the zoning, to get the DR12 zoning that we have, you have to provide, well, all you're supposed to do is provide a 50-foot right of way.
Right.
But we actually worked with staff going through TRC and committed to actually build that road as part of our plans to connect the property to the right of us.
And the asphalt will just stop at the property.
If you look on Google Earth, our apartment complex is south of us, it's the same thing with the road there, and then it lines up pretty close to where we're at.
Josh, could you state your name for the record, please?
Josh, will leave the pancake.
There'd be some kind of physical barricade. I mean, I guess that's a temporary thing. Looking for materials and how that'll look.
And I'm sure engineering, City of Charleston engineering, for the details will be provided.
That will be basically a road built to city standards, because eventually the idea is that
And, I'm wondering about the enclosed backyards.
I've got real heartburn with that staff comment. We did talk about it last time, but we provided commentary regarding considering fences or additional hedging, which from memory, it seems like there is more landscaping throughout. And I think the reorientation of the buildings helps with the concern that we had too. But for us, being a board that's convened to influence design along major public facing corridors to get into that level of requirement for property owner, I can't vote in favor of it.
When I know that 100 years ago, we lived on St. Charles Court, and it was very similar in the view, and the scenery was quite an asset. And I'm just wondering, in fact, this shares a very similar situation, and I'm fearful of that. Understanding the desire for the privacy of the fencing, I just don't know if it would be.
I don't know, are these rental or for sale?
Yeah,
And then I don't know if like the neighborhood covenants, will prohibit fencing or have, it just kind of gets into an area that I agree with you, Ashley, just generally speaking.
I don't know that enclosing the backyards, but at least providing some privacy between the units in the backyards. In a limited start of a fence or whatever. I don't think we need to prescribe that everything is closed off back there, because we have people that like to overlook the ponds,
I think aesthetically, it might actually look better without fencing
Yeah.
across the bottom, like for the ones that back up to that central area.
Yeah.
and then if it's for sale, then that's up to them.
Right, yeah, or not.
Well, yeah, or not
Exactly,
based on the covenants. And I think, some of the areas that are, tucked back in that have areas that could be fenced in for a dog, that's a different, it needs more thoughtfulness beyond what we do.
I just, like I said, I would be in favor of something between, just limited between
Just a
the
little
units.
length of a run from the
Yeah.
house.
Just to kind of give, if you want to step out on your back porch without your neighbor being right there,
Architecturally, I really like the evolution, the design direction. Thank you. It's the simplicity is greatly appreciated, and I think the accents where the applicant has really studied some of the fenestrations work nicely. The only thing that we really want to do is make sure that the applicant goes back and looks at the policy statement for windows that we have as you go toward the next evolution.
Talking about the fencing, I like the space between the units, the individual units, the green space. It's just a shame that we've got 6 condensing units in that space. I'm just wondering if we could look at putting them somewhere. I mean, that's a nice green area, and you're going to have to put a fence or something around those condensing units. And it just closes that off. It makes it a condensing yard. It's hard, but maybe explore another location. Those just seem like such unique pieces between the units. For a nice landscape feature.
Or at least breaking up the number of each gang in there.
Yeah.
The other opportunity that I know, I'm assuming that the mailbox area is enclosed or sheltered.
It's open, but it's got a lot of cover.
That might be a grand opportunity to create kind of a sense of arrival, maybe just in the detailing of how that canopy might begin to work.
I think it's that corner that's coming in. I've kind of just been looking at this is in the plans. I think they've got the start of something right here, but I think there's something, as this comes in, everything kind of looks the same streetwise, and there's a start of a plaza of some sort here, but it could have a focal point, I think, right there on the, even, if you mimic it, an arbor or something. And I'm not saying what it is, I'm just saying I think that that's an opportunity that needs to be developed into the next stage. That, as you come in, it creates a sense of pride, because you have the sign and then you have a street that really doesn't create any sort of special space through there. And I think that's your opportunity. The mail kiosk is here, but it's kind of tucked away. It really doesn't lend itself to focal points. I think that that's an opportunity to be developed into the next submittal. I don't think it's anything that holds anything up at this stage, but if we have the opportunity at preliminary to look at it.
Any other comments or a motion?
I think to make a motion for conceptual approval with staff comments. And I'm not sure where this comes, but anyway, study with board comments, study adding canopies over balcony doors. Study opportunity for creating sense of arrival, initial intersection of complex. By detailing of canopy at mailboxes. Provide screening details for HVAC units. To study the concrete patios regarding size and functionality.
Can we add to of the study providing privacy between the units.
Yes, and study the privacy element between the units. And we're not saying long fences, it may just be very short,
Or
decorative,
landscaping.
ornate, yeah, or landscaping.
Just, that's why I'm not
Just some.
saying a direction, just study it. Provide a solution to it.
We have a motion for conceptual approval of staff comments 3 and 4, along with board comments. 1, study adding canopies over balcony doors. 2, study the opportunity for creating a sense of arrival at the initial intersection. 3, provide detailing of the mailbox canopy. 4, provide screening details of the mechanical units. 5, study concrete patios ordering size and functionality and privacy between the units. Is there a second? Thank you, Amy. Any further discussion? Roll, Aaron?
Yes.
Ashley?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes, in favor?
I am also a yes in favor. Thank you all. We're now moving on to agenda item number 2, 345 Valley Road, requesting conceptual approval for the renovation and small addition to an existing building, converting what was a Subway restaurant to a Dairy Queen.
Take your time, cut just a little bit of context before the applicant starts. Okay, direct your attention to the screen. You can see the red thumbtack is the location of 345 Valley. Review. Just south of Sawgrass. If we get, you can see the area back here that used to be grass and a little seating area. A couple big existing trees right here that we're going to talk about. There is going to be a new addition to the right of what you see here, small addition. This is looking to the north on Folly, and this is going to be in part of our conversation about the width of this area and the existing monument sign that the applicants want to keep in that location. And then this is looking south on Folly. Again, it's just a pretty narrow strip of grass which is existing, and these lanes are going to be staying in the same spot. Another view of the building. And these are those 2 large trees which are proposed to be removed. Here's a large gum tree. Back into the site, looking east. This is that kind of view this weekend. And then with that, I'll turn over to the applicant. Or with the slides you want me to jump to.
Thank you. I'm Arnie McClure with Coast Architects. I have Matt Klein here who's going to speak a little bit here about the site, and then I'll follow up with architecture. And I also have Chandler Shaw with Sovereign, who is the owner of proposed Dairy Queen. So, but not of the property. So, property is they are in negotiations for a lease on the property, and David did mention 2 things that are kind of important for this project. One is and Lee Batchelder has made the determination the drive-through is grandfathered in, which is important for a Dairy Queen. And the other is that the owner has a stipulation that the sign must remain. It's not our stipulation. In the lease, we're not allowed to take the sign down. He sees it as an asset because obviously it's a little bit larger than the new signs would allow. So we're proposing to just maintain the sign. We were going to paint it and put a new face on it. So unfortunately, that's not something we have a lot of room to wiggle with on that. So with that, I'll let Matt give you an overview of the site, and I'll follow up with the building.
All right, so as Dave mentioned, there is the goal of this site plan is to finish the parking lot so that we have adequate parking for the patrons, and create a fluid drive-through using the majority of the property. It's a 2-lane kind of drive-through where you can drive around. It's one way in, one way out, creating circulation. We are going to be planting the backside. As you can see, it's got the landscape strip on the plan north and south. The existing parking doesn't have, is inside of that landscape strip, so the idea there is to beef up some of the plantings where possible with shrubs and that sweetgrass is shown on the north and south there. Speaking to David's probably comments on the sidewalk, this is in the Folly Road overlay. And it's the section that they're in requires a 12-foot wide sidewalk. This existing frontage, the area, as you can see, the right-of-way is about 2 inches off the back of curb on Folly Road. And so our proposal is to put the sidewalk 5 foot inside the property, beef up the existing grass that's there with some additional landscaping. But what that allows is the sidewalk not to go through the sign. So, you know, and a fire hydrant, but it's also, that is justified in our opinion by the bank down the street. It's kind of a newer bank within the last 10 or 15 years. I believe that sidewalk is 5 feet just from my research going up and down. You know, we did on the other side of the road, we did do a 12-foot sidewalk, but we do have the ability here to allow for a 5-foot sidewalk in this location, which I think would be warranted. It would be a massive sea of concrete out there on private property for a 12-foot wide sidewalk, 2.5 times what it's shown right there. So I believe that is a purview of the DRB to allow that reduction. We are showing some site walls. Arnie is proposing some design on some site walls to help with that buffer and just kind of an approach. We do have a integrated bench seating there. Provides, I think it's going to be masonry. Is that correct? Masonry site wall doubling as a bench, using it to eat your ice cream and enjoy the front facade there. They've got palm trees shown in the outdoor patron use area. That's intended for patron use. But scrolling back a little bit in the site, you can see can we go to right there. So you can see the location of those 2 trees that David mentioned. TO2 is the magnolia, TO1 is the sweet gum. That magnolia, if it were to stay, would compromise all of that parking. Just because how it would have to, where you wouldn't be able to work in the area, you would lose that whole run of parking, the whole drive would shift. You would lose the green space in the middle that we were proposing. And we could plant that interior green space area, I believe, to beautify that in future submittals. But that said, in the rear of the property, behind the rear's got an access drive. It's a 45-foot wide egress easement. The back side of that egress easement, where there is shown a 20-foot residential buffer, that is a wet drainage easement. It probably is not a good idea to plant back there. We are not proposing any landscaping back there. It is a conveyance for a lot of the water around there, so we want to try to keep it clear. I'm sure that we will end up cleaning that out. It will be part of our whole study, but we're not trying to impede any flow or product. It's a communal ditch. The apartment the apartments behind us flow into it. All the lots on our section flow into it. And then it in theory extends almost, the thought process behind that ditch extends almost all the way to Duke's Barbecue. So, and it somehow flows, to the west. I haven't gotten that detailed with that specific part, but, yeah, we're trying very hard to keep the integrity of that ditch. We are working with the city to develop a stormwater plan for the increased impervious area. And I'm sure that will be a pretty extensive stormwater feature. Here to answer any questions on the site, I'll let Arnie talk about the.
We'll wrap up and then we can go to questions. So, David, if you can just go to the, maybe start with the demolition plan. I think it's the one right before that. Not much to this plan because it's conceptual for one thing, but a couple of things I wanted to point out. So basically, if you look, the front wall, there's some old storefront. I think this building was a Kentucky Fried Chicken before it was a Subway. So it's a little worn and tired at this point. So we're gonna pull out all the storefronts, old bronze, single pane, all of them. We're going to demo most of the interiors of this building. The exterior walls are block masonry with stucco ephes coating on them. And so the exterior walls, for the most part, will remain except to that bump out to the north, which is fan north, is also direction north. And the wall in the front corner right there, those walls are going to come out. And then if you'll flip to the next page, and I forgot to point out, but there are also two walk-in cooler and a walk-in freezer that are existing now that are outside the building. They're not within the realm of the building. We're going to demo those out, and the new walk-in freezer, so those two hatched areas are currently just metal coolers that have been painted and stuck on the side of the building. Those are going away as well. And then if you look here, you'll see the gray area on the floor plan represents the expansion of the building. So mostly to the north. That way we can get in new ADA compliant toilets. We get in a walk-in freezer that will be within the shell of the building. And then on the back lower left corner is a walk-in cooler that's also, again, under roof and within walls of the building. The things that we wanted, besides the drive-through, which is there, we're maintaining that. The other things we felt like there was real opportunity in that it's a small area, but as that drive-through comes around, there's right now just a grass area to the front and which would be east and north of the building. And we feel like that's an excellent area to increase patron usage outside. People love to get ice cream, go sit outside on a nice day like we've had recently. So we think there's opportunities there to create more activity there. And then we also are really pushing to try to get a little more glass along Folly Road. There's just a couple of punched openings now. So our proposed scheme, we're basically doing that corner where all the seating area is in glass, so that as you do pass by, or if you're sitting in traffic, you're looking over and seeing people eating ice cream and food and thinking, I want to go there. So the idea is to make that more interactive with the street front there. So I think if you jump to maybe didn't really go through existing pictures, but I think you kind of know what it looks like. Right now, it's a sort of mustardy yellow stucco box. What we want to do is work from that. We are proposing adding ephes coating on top of the existing coating, but we're also proposing doing a brick base. So we'll pull back, dig up, and put a footing extension in if we need to, and come up with I think that's right around, I can't remember the exact height of it, but a 2'4", I think it is, masonry base, because we really don't want to carry that ephes down to the ground. That's where it's going right now. And then we're working within sort of the genre of Dairy Queen's Grill and Chill. They do have a national prototype, and it has, I think, 3 different colors of gray stucco, a red stucco, three kinds of metal panel. It's got a lot going on. And so what I tried to do, and I explained to them, and they were very willing to work with us, is let's simplify things a little bit, because my experience with this board is you come in with all that stuff and you're going to say, take it off, calm it down and simple it down. They have red LED lights that run around. So we have really kind of tried to pull back. The owner's been great. Dairy Queen's been very receptive and understanding that they need to be a good partner in this. And so what we're proposing here is sort of the main corner element on the left-hand side of the front of the building will be a red ACM panel. I don't have the exact red of it. It's a little bit darker. These renderings look a little dark on this monitor to me, but it is red with the Dairy Queen logo on it. And that'll be where, and I don't know what happened on that particular elevation, but the storefront is missing right where it says aluminum storefront. That's the door to come out of the thing. So one of the tricks with Revit, I'm still learning things with Revit. One of the tricks is there's phasing of existing and new, and for some reason, my storefront disappeared. I just saw it as I'm standing here, but that will all be where that yellow rectangle is there. All that will be glass. You can see it on the plan with the door coming out, and then you come out into that patio area. And at staff's request, we added some palmetto trees in the tree planting wells in the area there to kind of soften that, provide some shade. We will probably have seating with umbrellas in that area as well. And then there is a black ACM metal panel canopy that sort of runs horizontally there. Their signage, the grill and chill part of their signage sits on top of that. It's three-dimensional and does sit out of the face of that. I think if you go maybe to the next page, you can see sort of the side. This is that's the existing entrance, and then this is the side that you would be coming, the north side you would be coming from the parking lot. And one of the interesting things they have, and I wasn't sure, staff seemed to think like it was sort of interesting, but they do have what they call it's the Instagrammable spoon. Apparently it's a big deal to take your picture by the spoon. So we do have this big spoon sculpture that they would like to incorporate in, and it sits near the entrance there. Apparently it's a big deal to get your ice cream and take a picture by it. So in the world of social media we live in today. So other than that, I mean, that's really, we focused on that front and the corner. We are, like I say, wrapping the materials around the building. Basically one color stucco, one color brick. We haven't made final selections yet. We keep the palette as simple as we could. And main things I want to talk about, Shirley, did some rendering so you get a better feel. And we did struggle. We do have the brick walls out front. It's just going to be really tough to get. We didn't know about the 12-foot path until we kind of sat down and somebody said, wait a second, this is something new. I think David even said, we've never dealt with it in this part of Folly before. And to be honest with you, we're questioning whether it makes sense, because it's, for one thing, you're taking 12 feet of somebody's property, and then you're also having the difficulty of these existing structures and how are we going to work around this. And our understanding from TRC last week was that this board does have purview over the width of that sidewalk. So that's something for y'all to talk about, and I'm sure you're prepared to talk about.
Thank you.
Happy to take any questions on either one when you're ready.
Any questions? I had one for you, David, to start. The monument sign. With the significant improvements to the property, does the monument sign have to come into code compliance? Because I assume it's grandfathered in.
It would be grandfathered. And you saw I have it in my staff comments that after
Okay, so
I might scratch that one out. It does cause difficulty.
I'm not, even taking the path out, just trying to understand, usually when you improve, I think it's 50% of the property's value, you have to bring everything into code compliance. So I wasn't sure.
What is that trigger? That's one of my questions. What's the trigger? What's making this?
50% of the value, which I do not know, but the value
Of the appraised value of the building?
Yeah. And I don't have that answer either yet, but it's something that we need to look at. If that's,
Yeah, I mean, just thinking out,
But Probably that's a lead question.
Is TRC you're going to TRC? You're having to go to TRC?
Yeah. We went for our first, our
Because of the site
pre-app.
work that you're doing? Because
They
how
might
big
not
is the,
address science stuff.
how big is the addition?
Well, we're replacing those coolers, so it's less than 500 square feet of building space. We are enclosing the coolers, but the coolers are coming off. Does that make sense? So the actual addition is about 500.
But they said but you have to go to TRC? Does it have to go to
We
TRC?
were told we had to go to TRC.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah.
There's enough here.
Depends on the site work.
Yeah,
That's what I was asking. It's the site work that's making you go to TRC. Yeah.
and have you gotten BZA approval to remove the trees?
I have that in my staff observations as well.
Which, I mean, at that point, we normally do not hear these projects until they have BZA approval.
And I know Eric is supporting it, but we.
I usually.
Let me
have-
finish. So if everyone's okay with it, we'll take the approach that we've been taking, is we're not gonna take a vote or a motion. We'll go through feedback, but BZA usually has to occur prior to hearing DRB, so it slipped through. Does anyone have any issues with that?
What were you gonna say, David?
I was just gonna say that I did notice it when it came on, when it was submitted. I went and talked to Eric Schultz, and he said he would be okay with it going forward with DRB, because he would support the tree removal.
They have to go to the board, or is it gonna be
Yeah, he
staff
said it's
decision?
still a
it's
risk
not-
because the board could.
Yeah,
It's not Eric's.
Yeah.
The board could still deny it.
I agree with you, Eric. It's kind of our.
We've kept this line in the sand, from a precedent standpoint, again, to be fair, we're all here, so let's, kind of go through all of the motions, but not take a vote.
Yeah.
Does anyone disagree with that? Okay.
Don't get the tree approved, then this plan is kind of completely.
It changes it, yeah.
No, right. I do have some questions along that line. So I'm seeing some easements along the back side of the property, the west side, but I'm not seeing any on the east, the portion that's facing Folly. Although I do see the buffer. Are there any easements along Folly?
You have something, Matt?
Yes. So the trees outstanding, the sidewalk and the sign aren't gonna be affected by those discussions.
We can talk about them, but we can't vote on.
We're not gonna.
specifics.
Yeah. Are you sure does all of the power and gas right of ways fall in the right of way of Folly Road? So you have fire hydrant, overhead power, and gas markers along Folly. Does anything encroach into the property line,
Yeah, so
or is it all within the Folly Road right of way?
it may exist, but we have not been told about any kind of easements for any utilities in this area. I do understand what you're saying. I bet it's on like literally the back of the curb. I bet they're encroaching without permit per se, or what you would say is.
If you look at your demo plan, the demo plan shows all kinds of utilities within the
Oh,
property.
yeah, there's one going through the middle of the back of the property.
Yeah, front,
Right,
along
right,
Folly.
right. Great. I'm not aware of any utility easements that they would be existing within. It would come through the Alta if they did exist. It's not a plat, there's not a plat.
It's not a recorded easement.
Correct.
I mean, they're
Could be
not
like-
there.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, because they have blanket.
I would assume there's prescriptive rights of some sort.
Yeah, I had a piece of property that the Alta missed a 28-inch water line and had an easement on it. And it's really inconvenient to find it.
Oh,
Are we still
Really inconvenient.
going to do staff comments?
I think My thought is not that David doesn't need to read through them, but if there's anything that we need to discuss specific to them that the board has read through and have questions, because the staff comments will go to the team. So I don't think we need to go through reading all of them, especially given the length of them,
Okay,
unless anyone disagrees. We're still in questions. I'll still kind of run through the rough format of the meeting, but just not go through all of each individual staff comment. I will ask for public comment still. I think, for the sake of being here, and we also did receive one that was relevant to public comment submitted. So I think we still kind of keep a somewhat semblance of the meeting.
Can I circle back for a moment to the sign? I mean, in our policy statement, stipulates that no changes can be made to cabinet or structure of non-conforming signs. A non-conforming sign may be refaced.
Say that again, or can you start?
It says that a non-conforming sign may be refaced, but any of the changes would require the entire side to be brought into conformity with the current zoning ordinance. And it sounds like all that Arnie was talking about was just refacing it. So consequently.
Like I said, unfortunately for us, people here in this room, that's a stipulation of the current property owner, that we're not allowed to do anything with that sign other than do things.
And just to kind of add to that a little bit, without being here to say anything, I wouldn't, I'm not speaking for him, but you would seem this appropriate that the drive-through be existing non-conforming and allowed to remain. The sign could very well follow the same kind of purview.
But the biggest issue is as long as that we're in the same mindset that it's just refacing the sign, it falls well within the context of what our policy statement stipulates.
I think it'll go back to then a lead question on the sign.
Just a couple of other questions on the site plan, and I'm sure this is just, can you flip to the one? Oh, you're already on L1.
Good job.
very
I read
prescriptive.
my mind. I'm assuming that there's some layers that haven't been cut off. There's for instance, in the landscape area behind the building, it says concrete. That's really grass.
We have not layer managed that whole process until we get closer to the.
Yeah, but for the benefit of the board though,
Yes, sir.
so that we understand, it needs to at least show us what's actually being proposed on the landscape plan. So that's not concrete, correct?
I think that's the old
That
seating area.
is, yeah, that's.
The drive,
Okay.
that's the old drive.
That's
So-
correct.
All right. And then the old drive that comes off near the dumpster, that's been eliminated as well, I believe. Fair assessment. Okay.
The dumpster pad where it says dumpster pad in the old
Right.
drive-through, yes, sir. That is, yeah, we'll layer manage that off.
All right. Just wanted to verify and make
No
sure.
problem.
I thought I had that
No
right.
problem, we'll get that.
And it'd be helpful too to see where the sculpture is, because I don't think it shows up in the plan.
It shows on the plan, interestingly.
Oh, not in the landscape.
Not on the
Site
landscape
plan.
plan, yeah.
Yeah, it would just be helpful to understand how it works with the paving and the plants and everything.
And that spoon is independent of any structure. It's not leaning against the building.
Correct, it's mounted in a sonotube, like
Okay.
4-foot deep sonotube, concrete, and it has a steel
Okay, now-
attachment. I don't have a lot of detail
That's all
on
right.
it, I've been asking about that.
And Arnie, only for you would I ask this question. Does it rotate?
It's worked out good sometimes.
I think rotating would be cool. I look at that sign all the time and I go, that is really a cool sign.
No, it would be better if it scoops.
There we go. Does it have to be there?
No, I mean, that's near where, so it's interesting because David saw an earlier generation of this where they have what they call an eyebrow. That horizontal black canopy is just a fascia that sticks about 20 inches off of it doesn't have a top, it's not solid. And DRB staff didn't really like the way that looked, and they actually had the spoon come up through the back of that. Yeah, and Dave was like, between Dave and Tori, like, can we just make that solid and move the spoon out? And so that's what you get now. So it is interesting, you know, people come up with something and we don't show it in our rendering, they actually use the spoon again on the door handles. So by the time we get back, I'll have to figure out how to model. It was really hard to model that spoon in Revit, by the way. I spent way too much time on that. And I don't know.
Any room questions?
Oh, great
Any
questions.
any additional questions?
Right now.
Go ahead.
I guess our question, we would like to inquire about why the palm was chosen.
Palms.
Yeah, the palm species.
That was just what was recommended and discussed during preliminary conversations with staff. That can be adjusted, but I'm pretty sure the last time we did the Dairy Queen, had presented on.
We don't have a problem with a palm, is that specific palm.
Yeah, that species of palm doesn't do well in our climate, always. So,
No problem. We can get that. And thank you for that comment.
And if we're just having sort of open discussion, it's okay.
Let's finish questions,
Okay.
public comments, then let's
Okay.
get to that point if that works.
We've sort of gotten out of whack.
I know,
Sorry.
we're a little bit atypical at this
Yeah.
point. Any other questions?
How many square feet is the building and the addition?
Altogether, I think it's like 2,300 square feet, it's 1,800 square feet. It's pretty small. It's actually under the DRB full board review requirements, but I think it's the drive-through maybe.
That's what I was wondering.
That's what I had said at first, but then I understood it grandfathered in. It was more had to do with the bike path. The planning department getting on us about wanting us to enforce a wider path. We were suggesting.
I thought there was a staff review for a building this size. Is that not right?
Say that again.
I thought it was staff review for a building this size.
I was just saying the reason I wanted to bring it to the board was because of the bike path.
Oh,
The
well,
planning
that,
department wanting us to enforce that. Just a little more help with the.
gotcha.
Any other
And the
questions?
monument sign needed to be discussed.
I guess I'll have I was gonna let it wait till discussion, but it's a question. I mean, again, I'm going back to right along Folly in the property line, you have overhead transmission lines, water line, and an underground gas line. Have any of those utilities, I guess, been discussed or talked to about the path and any improvements in that area?
And then we will make sure to do that.
David, has a 12-foot path been enforced near this site on that side of Folly?
I don't think, not in my recollection. We've only been enforcing a few of these. When I first started, we wanted.
So basically, you would have a 5-foot path coming into a potentially 8 or 12-foot path, and just restricting back down again to 5 foot.
I'm not in agreement with
So-
the planning department.
This is gonna come up for me in discussion, but it is a question, but for you and not for the applicant. This 12-foot, is it suggested in the Rethink Folly plan, or is that part of city ordinance? Okay,
Any other, go ahead.
With DRB having the authority to reduce it to what's appropriate.
Any other questions?
Can I just make a comment? Currently, there is no sidewalk within, I don't know how many property. I mean, this will be 12-foot wide going property line to property line. And maybe one day they all get redeveloped. And so that's the other heartburn is you're gonna put this huge piece of, it's a great idea, but the execution is really difficult, particularly in the areas that were developed, you know, in the 70s.
Okay. Any other questions? We'll move on to public comments. We did receive one via online submission from Andrew Boardman, commenting on, I was going to summarize it, but talking about the palmetto and palms, that the site needs to incorporate more landscaping and oaks, and talking about signage as well. Those are the most relevant portions of that comment. Anyone else here to speak? Katie?
Thank you. Katie Zimmerman with Charleston News. And it's really good to see all of you. The multi-use path requirement is part of the overlay. It is an ordinance. It recommends a minimum of 12 feet wide, but it also allows for exceptions for things like landscaping that maybe needs to be a little prettier, or things like utility lines. So we have several great examples along Folly Road where you've seen as each parcel owner does their part, including the agency. You've got one parcel further down Folly that the path is going to be blocked by a utility pole, so they split the path. It goes around on either side, so it's 6 feet around it. We had examples of there being a hardship, so the property owner did 8 feet. The intent, as you all probably know, of the Rethink Folly vision is, over the years, every parcel owner does their part unless they end up in a segment where the county is taking control of the project, where the highest collision rates occur. And then the county is doing their part, cobbling together various funding sources. So across the street from this parcel, you've got one project at Tatum that's doing the 12-foot required path, no problem. You've got the path that's going in along the cloud plantation, it's only going to be 8 feet. But regardless, and I recognize this is not really what you all meet about, but the intent of this path over time is to make Folly Road an entirely different experience for multiple types of users, particularly vulnerable road users. Within these 2 or 3 blocks alone, since 2018, we've had 5 bike ped injuries and 1 fatality. So it's a problem area. It's really, really important to do the best we can do with this path. I understand the issues that come up. I understand the difficulty in execution, always with a 12-foot path. But I am certain there is a way to negotiate at least an 8-foot path on this parcel. And I think it's really, really important to keep that going as we're going along. Well, you might also know, Charleston News, we have a campaign because Wacom Cut Bridge obviously needs to be addressed. That's one of the bridge gaps. We've got it right near here. You've also got the Battery to Beach plan that all the municipalities have signed up. So there's a lot in the works all around here, and it's continuing in the works. Just very, very important that we figure out a path forward. No pun totally intended.
Path forward.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Katie. Anyone else would like to speak?
May I ask Katie a question?
Or informal?
Since we're so loose, you know, one of the things that would be, what's happening is, and I'm an advocate of Rethink Folly Road, and been here before, you know that. The dilemma is that it's going to become so disjointed in the manner that each single property owner is coming forward with a proposal, and it will lose its sense of conformity and uniformity. And there are ways that it can be done successfully. For instance, if a developer who is coming in, there's a pool of money that's set aside for an overall master plan. If a master plan were developed to allow us to see what the big picture is, but when it comes before DRB, it's very constrained, if not very myopic, in the manner that we're looking at it. So it would, but anyway, it's okay. That's my.
I had another question. I assume you guys looked at splitting the path. Did you look at splitting? Maybe having 2 5-foot paths? Yeah.
The sign specifically is about 7.2 feet off the back curb. I believe with the intent of a bicycle being the reason why the width would be kind of a deal, is trying to get as many users as you can get on the. I splitting it on this specific, you can see the 25-foot buffer dotted line right there. So if you can imagine half of that area to get to 12 feet.
Well, I mean, just coming this way, did you look at,
So
know what I
if you did 8 and you split it as 2 4s, you wouldn't actually be hitting the kind of the, so I guess where I'm going with this is 2 6s, okay, is a big path, but you're still gonna use half of that space. So let's talk about reducing it. So we reduce it to 8. 2 4s doesn't quite get you anywhere. 3 and 5. So, you know, something of the semblance of like an 8-foot uniform if we were gonna go to 8 foot, but it would just need to pinch down specifically in that specific location. And if you look on the south side of the site there, the hydrant, that hydrant is going to cause the sidewalk to come off to the back. I
The
think
power
that,
poles are too. I mean, the power poles are right at back of curb. So I mean,
Yeah.
there's gotta be some kind of offset likely.
so it's gonna run through there and it's gonna disjoint whatever minimal landscaping we can get in there. The idea being that we can, I mean, and we'll work with staff however possible, and I ride my bike daily, so, I mean, I understand.
And
I
sorry to jump in, but if it's helpful to kind of better understand, the intent is really to avoid user conflict, right?
Yeah.
And a great example is wonderful Paramount Bridge. Wonderful amenities, reason why Charleston was founded, but we now know it's not wide enough. And we've got people running into each other, cyclists getting their collarbones broken, pedestrians getting nailed, because you've got this user conflict. It's bi-directional biking and walking path, it's fairly well. Figure out, you know, even splitting it, even 4 feet on each split, you're giving the user the opportunity, so if you're on a bike on the sidewalk, you look up, you see a pedestrian coming.
I think my fault with the 5-foot thing, is I think that this.
City.
City
Yeah.
5-foot requirement for commercial, so if you have 2 4s, it doesn't meet either.
But would they, in this case, count them as?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're splitting it just for like
Yeah,
a small portion,
so
it
it
may
would
work, I
count.
don't know. I think you have to provide a turnaround, or I don't know, but anyways, I think the consensus is from the board that we support the use of a multi-use path and that it needs to be studied clearly further for a number of reasons. So I think we can let that lie, unless anyone else has
I
anything
have
else to
one
add.
other question about that, just because it does affect it. Those site walls that are shown in a diagonal, are those existing or those are completely
Those
new?
are new, so they can go in another configuration. We just
Like-
simply put them within reason, the location of the paving, and to allow ourselves some room to landscape on the,
But the length of
Folly
them
Road
could be
size.
adjusted if we, to accommodate a wider
Yeah.
path. We
Yeah,
we
right
aren't
now
set
it's all-
with them like that, so.
it's as much symbolic as is anything else that we acknowledge we were gonna screen the parking, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that.
I think, is there anything else that, as the board, we want to discuss that are in staff comments or any other feedback that we want to give? Again, not taking a vote on.
We've discussed the palms, and there are some plants that I would applaud you for using. There's plants here, I would suggest you find somebody to give you some advice. Vestrum is,
Yes, sir.
and I would also consider the shape and the full form, things like sweetgrass right against the back of the curb there.
And in the informality, I think Andy's trying to say to hire a landscape architect to do the plan.
I
No
would
Matt's
suggest.
knowledge, so I'll state it.
And I think too, with the, I mean, you showed those oaks right on top of that wall, which doesn't really work either, so I just,
There's a lot of work there.
And then I know you were trying to get us off of this multi-use path, but from a discussion perspective, we ran into this on a site that we were reviewing in West Ashley. And Plan West Ashley similarly calls for a 12-foot multi-use path. But to put that on the backs of the private property owner fully seems inappropriate. And for this board to enforce something like that seems beyond our purview. I wasn't aware that the city required a 12-foot sidewalk in this area. So I think that would be something that I would really like to have clarification on, what the code actually says, because it's not how I understand the code to be written. I think it's a great idea for us to have this moving forward, but, when you're on a corridor that has easements and setbacks and right-of-ways that can incorporate that, that's a different conversation than saying, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Property Owner, we expect you to build a multi-use path for the public's use. So I think that there's balance to be found there, and before we review the project the next time, it would be really great to have ordinance clarification.
Katie and I were in discussion this week via email, and she sent me the codes, which I will forward to you.
Awesome, thank you.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say architecturally, I
Yeah.
really like the direction. I particularly love the linear feel of the fenestration. I think I wish there was some way you might break that south elevation on the other, but looking at the plan, there's really nothing that provides that opportunity.
To be honest with you, I looked at it today and thought the exact same thing,
Well,
so we'll think about that.
I noticed how much time you spent on that elevation, Arnie.
It's the spoon. I like the spoon.
The reality is that's kind of what it is now, and I have to say, I probably have driven by there, 100 times and not noticed it, but I think we do have the opportunity to make it.
But I mean, that being said, I really do think that you've really done a very, very nice job with translating this into something that's going to be a very nice piece of component, part of the canvas along Folly Road. Thank you.
Thank you for the input on that.
Any other feedback that we'd like to give?
I would really think about the space in that front area with the palms and it's kind of what I've said before, is if something looks small on paper,
It's small.
in real life, it's really small.
What do you all think of the back area, the grass area with the trees that behind the building?
My only concern is the back of a restaurant. It's just never great.
Is that enough?
You make do with what you have sometimes, but I've just having done some mixed use deals that have restaurants like this on the ground floor, the back side of a restaurant is just never great. But I do think that you kind of have to think about that front plaza area and what you're going to get out of it.
Just to clarify, we don't have any kind of can wash or service, everything, like I said, they do everything inside the building.
Yeah.
It's a
I'm just curious.
Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, the location of the grease trap is,
It's existing and we're gonna be right up against it. We've got to verify we can expand in that direction a little. We've still got a little bit of, find the edge of that and see how close we are because we pushed out towards it. But we're hoping to we still don't know. We got to see if that one can be reused. That's the idea.
when they clean it out too, that smell just lingers.
Well, that's one of the worries about having the seating area right there, so.
Can I make a quick comment? Just noticing, you didn't say it. This is my staff comments, but along the lines of spoons not showing on the site and landscape plan.
And
Also, you have that seat wall right here that's not shown. If you could show it.
And as I think, as we've mentioned, is let's get the drawings cleaned up a little bit so we know what we're looking at.
Oh, I was just going to say, it seems to me that, I'm not suggesting this, but if you didn't do as much site work as you're showing, and you only have that small of an addition, and TRC didn't let you get rid of the trees, or there was some problem, it seems like you could still do the renovation, to me, right? And follow city code, city ordinances, and not have to get DRB approval, not have to go to TRC, because that's a small enough addition that it wouldn't trigger TRC other than the site work.
It will.
I'm positive that the addition would not.
I
Especially
think
when you're in, all the improvements are made too.
But if you're not doing any site work improvements, if you're not adding parking, there are no improvements, and you don't have to do landscape. No, I'm just saying, if there's an issue, if you can't tear the tree down, or if you have to move that monument sign, that's a suggestion.
That's an interpretation by staff.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way it's written. If you look at the form on TRC, when you have to go to TRC, it tells you what, maximum addition size.
Okay. Let's wrap up with the approval of the I think that puts to bed, that agenda item. We're not taking a vote, so now we're gonna move on to the next agenda item. Approval of minutes from the March 20th, 2023 meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Thank you, Dinos. Is there a second? Thank you, Andy. Any further discussion? I'll call roll. Aaron?
Yes, in favor.
Ashley?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes, favor.
Yes, in favor as well, and we are adjourned.
Great job.
All right.
Katie, I was gonna suggest something to you.
I do think our future note for future meetings, we should not accept it when we've got approval, despite whatever Eric says.
That's what I would do. I'd skirt the whole board.
Just because we never know.
How much off-boarded is that part?
It's rotating in the grade.
Yeah. At what cost? Yeah. Save a couple trees, save a lot of headaches, save a lot of consultant fees.
I don't know. I'm just saying,
I don't know.
That's why you look at that one page that says, this is when you have to go to TRC.